It's a public meeting at our monthly meeting, and I do want to clarify something for you. We don't approve anything. We make a recommendation to the NPU based on dealing with the applicant and if there is an issue. And the only thing we anytime we get involved is only if the city says you must get a variance.
I can clarify that. In order to get a variance, you are required to start with the association and go to the NPU. I realize the bill doesn't go to the counter. By virtue of the fact that the association is a public organization that is quasi-governmental, the laws apply to the whole association, not just the zoning.
Yeah, I appreciate that point of view, Tom. I don't think it's sustained in law. When we quarreled with the Atlanta Botanical Garden and argued in Superior Court that they were a quasi-governmental organization, citing, among other things, their use of public land, their charging admission to public land, their freedom, their failure to even share any of it, any part of it any longer with the citizens for free. The Superior Court held that not even that standard made them, their use of public resources, they didn't agree. So I think to state that that's unqualified it is the optimistic and best wishes of the First Amendment Foundation, which is a group I support avidly in general. I just don't think it's accurate. More to the point here is there's no issue of malfeasance here. When we operate, the treasurer, in this case, operates independently of the Summerfest committee. The bookkeeper operates independently of the treasurer. The board, the contracts are reviewed independent of the Summerfest committee, so there's never been even a suggestion of that. I think if somebody wants to make a motion to strike the need to know piece, they can do so. But I do want to point out the existing reality that we had a request for some of this information this year, and without hesitation and unanimously denied to grant access to the contract information under our fiduciary responsibility piece. So I think that ultimately the position that you would like to argue that we hold would leave us in a position where we could not successfully negotiate the sort of contracts that we need to make Summerfest successful, and I am reluctant to get near it, given what it means to this community. Madam.
I'm just wondering if there's maybe the amendment could be amended to strike the similar circumstance. I think that's the concern that most of us have, that it be confined only to dealing specific to Summerfest, and similar circumstance could go to all kinds of things without our knowledge.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Is there a second to the motion to strike the phrase "there is"? Is there comment on the amendment, the amended motion as it now stands, sir?
This is a point of clarification. And I understand if someone wanted to see something wording required, they can do that if they were agreeable to signing some type of non-disclosure.
As Judy and I wrote it, and not with the unanimous support of some folks who work hard on Summerfest, we saw this as a broadening of the right to see the information, as long as members of the association, that is all residents, rental or otherwise, hold themselves to the same sort of confidentiality standard that we are required to hold ourselves to. But that will be on the main motion. We do have a properly made and seconded motion to strike the phrase or similar circumstance from the wording. Sir, comments on this motion?
Well, question for clarification purposes. With respect to more similar language that we want to undertake about striking, maybe instead of just more similar, I believe that probably was intended to mean events, correct? So maybe instead of striking it, we can substitute it for events, because there are multiple events that we can't possibly anticipate today here that we may have over the years. And if we restrict this to contract negotiations for events, then I think it more accurately covers what the need is. So I believe for similar was probably intended to cover events.
However, unless you want to make that a motion, I actually don't think we're alarmed about the amendment as it now stands. It serves to do what we want to do, if anything ever got to the level of the tour homes or Summerfest, it would take a huge amount of time and effort to get there, and there'd be plenty of time to come back and raise the issue before this body if it were necessary. And that is the sole thing we were thinking about, was just how we negotiate a successful sponsorships and other agreements. So we can't fully anticipate the agreements, but we were willing to share the info if people will sign. We can't disclose it, and we're just willing other members to say. Anyway, before us is the amendment, which strikes or similar circumstance, and I'm going to call it, and if there's no further discussion, yes ma'am. Thank you. I'll ask the maker if she considers that a friendly amendment, and she can accept it, and if not, we will not accept it. We will.
I'm not sure, because I think that you would need clarification of what events were.
So why don't we just leave it as the amendment on the floor is this one, which we can vote down if we don't like it, but nonetheless, I think that the two people that wrote it don't have a problem with striking the entire phrase from it. It'll probably, I think, serve us just fine. So that is the motion, is to strike the clause. All in favor of that motion, we'll try voice vote first. Please say aye. Aye. Opposed? In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion, the amendment is accepted. Is there further discussion on the main motion as before us, madam?
I would like to further amend that clause to require that it only apply to contracts that the board is legally obligated to keep confidential.
Second.
Yeah, I'm a little, I don't necessarily object. She wants to amend it further conceptually, but in order to make an amendment, which I'm certainly willing to entertain, we just need specific language to substitute in the places other than else. And if we can't agree on it, we can drop it. We're going to be able to operate just fine as we did under the existing circumstances. I want to point out, I will be slightly unhappy because I actually would prefer to have a broader view. Ms. Guy. Sorry, I really didn't hear you either, and maybe it was this. Could you repeat that?
I think that beyond the contracts with our vendors, there's lots of proprietary information. So limiting the language of what is proprietary to just a contract, I think takes away the spirit of the intent of trying to protect our revenues in this day.
What would be examples of that beyond contracts, just so we can?
Our, how we put together the logistics, the fundraising, the music, and just how we recruit the sponsors. I think it's a broad how-to manual that we put together to raise the money that we do. I don't think it's just a matter of this contract and that contract, and we're trying to hold together to maintain that revenue.
As the other co-director for Summerfest, by the way, we earned over $185,000.
Why don't you come up here, Pam? I'm not sure anybody can hear you. Why don't you make the mic?
What do you want me to do?
Yes, please come up here.
Hi, I'm the other Summerfest co-director, and by the way, we earned over $185,000 this year. It was our best year ever. Ann and I have worked together for several years, and she's absolutely right. There are processes, methods, and procedures, the types of committee chairs that we have, who do we need to be, to put in charge of certain areas, how many people does it take, our layouts for Kid Fest. It's the whole can of worms that makes, our ability to grow our revenues year after year. We just keep getting better because we keep doing it and improving our methods and procedures, as well as, improving our contract negotiations. So I think we're making too big of a deal out of this, frankly. I mean, it's, the intent is there, and, I would just recommend we substitute or remove the language and let's move on. Thank you.
Further comments? Further amendments? Before us is the motion as amended, which with the deleted language as currently amended from us that substitutes the or similar events. So absent any further discussion, we will take a vote on all of it. I'm going to do this by hands. I want everybody, please raise your hand if you're in favor of this amendment. You count this side.
The first one?
Excuse me, I apologize. If you were in favor of the motion as amended currently on the floor, please.
Still confused.
A reading of what we are actually voting on now, because
Yeah.
it has been amended.
Absolutely.
Confusing as to
The only thing that's been amended is the removal of the phrase or similar event, but we'd be glad to read it.
And that's out of the definition.
And that's out of the definition phrase of the piece, I believe, right? Out of proprietary information, and Jenny will read that to us. The way we have it reading now, proprietary information means all trade secrets know-how, proprietary business methods, confidential information, and shall include without limitation agreements and databases developed by any director or member of the fundraising committee, which is the committee for these two events, in connection with the operation and management of Virginia-Highland Summerfest or Tour of Homes events. Second. We're good? All right, I will again, sir.
I hate to ask the question, but does this mean, if it passes, that a member who has joined the committee to actually help fundraising has contributed their own personal contacts to that database, but then those contacts can no longer be shared with anything else or just new contacts with? You said contacts in the database in the reading of the motion was going to be declared proprietary because that's somebody you were soliciting for funds, right? So what if this person then moves to, say, Inman Park, and chooses to share that contact with Inman Park Festival because they joined the committee there? Does it create a conflict with that person because it's proprietary information based on the committee they
I can't
joined?
believe that the single contact that you're talking about that people can do ahead of time. I'm going to say the answer. There's no hedging that I'm not sure I fully get the scope of your question, but yeah, I know if this is, you had that information outside that context, you still had that information, and I may not fully understand it, Todd, somewhere.
I'm not trying to be difficult, but I deal with intellectual property issues every day, and I just want to make sure that we're not intending to create some encumbrance on someone who has brought and donated information to make the committee's efforts stronger, should they then take their same information and process it and contribute it somewhere else. But it sounds to me like that language might prevent them from doing so. And I'm not a lawyer, and I don't play one on TV.
I think the scope of this provision has been taken way out of context. One thing, let me just backtrack a second, which I think is really important here. The way that this came up, if you read the provision as it is originally drafted, as it stands today, the only time that the board shall provide documents to people is for a proper purpose. Proper, what is that? It's very subjective, it's very vague. So we were actually trying to take it a step further to say what is a proper purpose. And we were just trying to think what circumstances would there be any reason to require confidentiality or to try to ensure that we protect the business of the association. And we know I can't hand these ladies enough credit. Pam and Ann, they start meeting months ahead of the event. There are committees, they have it down to a science, and it has taken years to develop this. So that's really all we were trying to protect, because, if any of us wanted to go out and have an event like this and make $185,000, we really could, based upon the knowledge that they have. So anyway, so as far as your question, sir, I'm sorry, I don't mean to give a long, winding answer, but this is really just if somebody comes to us
and says, hey, we want to see all the documents that you have. This doesn't prohibit anybody from going and talking to their friends or doing whatever they want to do. This is not a limitation.
Contributing their own knowledge, you're just saying, this is our process, don't duplicate it, turn it over to the park.
Correct, or if we have a list of everybody that we've dealt with, yeah, you can't take this list and say, here's who you need to know. That's all it says.
No. I'm glad you did it. Tom's my next door neighbor, and I have to get along with him. I'm gonna, further comments or questions? All right.
Question,
This-
what are we voting on it?
I will announce it. We are voting on the motion, on the entire bylaws at this point, as amended. Unless somebody wants to make a further amendment. We have amended one section of the bylaws.
As you read them right here?
Yeah.
Okay. Just
That one section has been amended, but now we're voting on the piece as a whole. Would you like to separate and vote on that one? You can. Upon properly moved. We now have the entire section, the entire bylaws in front of us as amended. Is all in favor of amending the bylaws as amended, please raise your hand and please leave it here patiently while we count the